faded from the pane, the embers breathed in red. A phonograph began its sigh where supper things had led. The plates were stacked beside the sink, the towels hung to dry. Your apron on the kitchen hook still held the evening by. You crossed the rug in stocking feet, the lamp made velvet mild, and all the room grew small and warm the way it had when young and wild. After the dishes dried, we found one waltz the day had spared, and all the little room was shared. After the dishes dried, you laid your hand upon my sleeve, as if by old design. The chair I'd pushed back from the table still stood a little fine. The phonograph turned soft and slow, a teardrop near a smile, and every step across the rug made common things worthwhile. The curtains kept the starlight out, the fire gave one last glow. Yet in that hush of reverie, the years move sweet and slow. No serenade came through the street, no grand occasion shone, only your darling near my cheek, and all the workday gone. And then I knew how love grows old, not dim and not denied, but warm as hands that meet at dusk when all the dishes dry. After the dishes dry, we found one waltz the day had spared, and all the little room was shared. After the dishes dried. The phonograph grew faint and thin, the embers turned to gold. Still one last turning stayed with us, more dear for growing old. The ropes were loosed without a fuss, the bell gave one small sound, the water took the ferry side and pulled the shoreline round. The river wore a pewter sheen, the gulls kept to the stern. Your hat was pinned against the wind, your collar softly turned. The bench along the outer rail still held the morning through. I saw you pause before you sat and knew what I must do. I spread the market pages down across the painted slats. The grocer's ad, the racing odds, the weather, this and that. So nothing cold should find its way through wool and age and sense. The paper on the bench. You sat and spoke of common things, the butcher and his knee, your sister's letter from the coast, the pears still on the tree. The ferry cut the river wide in slow and patient halves, and every little thing you said made homely all the draft. No vow was ever needed there above the diesel hum. No rose, no grand demonstrative word, no drum for what we've done. For love, when it has had its years, grows practical and quick. It sees the damp before you do, and minds it with a flick. I spread the market pages down before you even knew, and all the newsprint in the world turned warm by sheltering you. At landing, when you rose again, the wet had left no trace, only the faint shape where you'd been, and one dry, tended place. The paper on the bench, I folded it beneath my arm when all the crossing passed. One headline blurred, one corner torn by a river wind at last. And somehow that poor common sheet was finer than it sounds, for all the day it seemed to keep the shape of where you'd lean down.
Twilight thinned on window glass, the cobblestone shone blue. A little bell gave one soft sigh and pulled the dark streets through. The velvet kept the carriage warm, the brass rail held its gleam. My silhouette beside the pane looked lighter than a dream. One woman left with parcel string, one man with coat and cane. Their footsteps faded from the stones and would not come again. Where the last lamp fell, the whole old corner came in sight, then slipped once more into the night. Where the last lamp fell, we passed the baker's shuttered door, the florist dark and still. A thread of starlight touched the roofs above the climbing hill. I did not mean to lift my head or let the blue streets call, yet something in that thinning light remembered me at all. The window kept a little star, the wires gave back a sigh. A hush of reverie rode near, then drifted slowly by. No serenade came through the square, no voice spoke out my name. Only the bell, the rails, the dark, the city just the same. And yet I think some evenings hold a tenderness too well, the way a whole lost world returns where one last lamp once fell. Where the last lamp fell, the whole old corner came in sight, then slipped once more into the night. Where the last lamp fell. The tram moved on through sleeping blocks, the lamps grew faint and small. Still one last patch of silver stayed where night had touched the wall. One bell let go the air, the rails receive the rain, a little wash of midnight blue moved down the window pane. A woman rose 2 stops before, her gloves were pale as cream. The door sighed wide, then softly shut, as in a narrow dream. Her footsteps crossed the little platform, then thinned upon the stone, and all at once the empty car seemed larger and alone, not lonely in some tragic way, but tender, frail and true.
as certain hours in cities are, when night looks back at you, where the footsteps went, the heart went listen after them, through rain, through rails, through midnight dim, where the footsteps went. Outside the cobblestones below gave back a broken gleam, a barber pole without its turn, cut slowly through the steam. The tailor's window held dark suits, like men who would not stir, and every street the tram passed by seemed keeping watch for her. My hand moved once against the glass and left no mark to stay. The weather found the place at once and drew it all away. No grand serenade found the street, no bright farewell was cast, only the hush that follows heals when something dear has passed. And I thought some things do not leave with thunder, flame, or tears. They only turn one quiet corner and live for years and years. Where the footsteps went, the heart went listening after them, through rain, through rails, through midnight dim, where the footsteps went. The final corner bent toward dawn, though dawn was still afar. One pane received a little rain, one roof received one star. And long after the conductor passed, and long after the bell was spent, my heart kept hearing through the dark where the footsteps went.
The Sunday lamps burn low, the room is brushed with gold. A phonograph begins its little tale of old. You turn your cup once more, then let the spoon lie still. Outside the cobblestones are dark beneath the rill. The velvet keeps its warmth, the pane receives the rain, and all the little sounds grow clear, for fear of giving pain. The glass between us keeps all the words at bay, and and turns our silence into gray. The glass between us, a waiter clears one plate. Your gloves rest by the brim. A pale silhouette goes by and makes the daylight dim. You say, my darling, once, so lightly with a sigh, as if the hour were made of smoke and might not quite comply. The coffee sends up steam, the windows blur the square. A little reverie moves softly through the air. No grand serenade was needed, no teardrop sought the light. You only touched the misted pane, then let it leave the sight. And something in that tender mark, though gone before it stayed, told more than all bright vows could tell of what the heart had made. The glass between us keeps all the words at bay and turns our silence into gray. The glass between us, the old tune thins to air. The rain grows fine and far, still one dim glimmer on the pane receives a little star. And long after the cups grow cold and all the lamps must lose, my heart remains beside that glass with what it could not use. Twilight rested on the frames, the lamp rehearsed its gold. The phonograph with patient grace unfastened from the cold. You did not ask me for the dance, you only crossed the room and drew my chair a little back, as if to lift the gloom. The velvet curtains kept the rain, the grate kept back the blue, and every little thing we owned grew hushed to look at you. Then when your fingers touched my sleeve so lightly with a sigh, the years we never thought to name went quiet by and by. The evening learned
your name. From how you moved, not what you said. From lamplight on your silvered head, the evening learned your name. The teacups had gone pale with steam. The embers breathed in red. You smiled and said, my darling heart, the way you always said. No miracle had crossed the rug, no bright occasion shone, unless one counts the tender grace of never being alone. Outside the cobblestones were dim and silvered by the rain. Inside one little waltz began and made us young again. No grand serenade came down the stair, no trumpet split the air. But when your hand enclosed my own, I felt how love lives there. Not in the blaze that startles youth, nor vows that bloom and burn, but in the hush a whole room keeps for those who still return. The evening learned your name. From how you moved, not what you said. From lamplight on your silvered head, the evening learned your name. The record thinned to whispered dust. The fire withdrew to rose. Still starlight lay across the rug in little afterglows. And long after the last note passed, and long after the rain grew tame, my heart kept moving through that room where evening learned your name. The pier lights shake along the boards, the ticket girls are gone, and in the booth behind the games the painted moon leans on. You stand beside the canvas screen with salt upon your sleeve, a tray of silver flashbulbs spent too warm yet to receive. The roller skates have quieted, the prizes hang half low. A paper horse on painted springs still rocks when no winds blow. The last young couple step inside with laughter almost shy. He drops his cap beneath the stool, she lifts her flowers high. You turn the crescent by one nail to catch them in its curve, as if a wooden moon could give the grace they both deserve. The painted moon, the painted moon, was only bored and borrowed blue above a canvas dune. The painted moon, yet when you said it right, two ordinary faces found a softer kind of light. tell her not to move too soon, then count beneath your breath. The bulb goes white, the curtain jumps, the whole room startles left. He laughs and finds her gloved hand there. She smooth as her little veil, and you slip out the paper strip before the colors pale. I wait outside with nothing lost, no picture left to claim. Only the smell of salt and bulbs and how you say his name. You trim the edges with your shears, then place the portraits flat. And all the summer I had kept seems suddenly like that. Years will take the penny games, the booth, the pier, the shore, the paper moons that lovers used to stand beneath once more. But I remember how you turned that crescent with your hand, how something made for make-believe could tell the truth and stand. The painted moon, the painted moon still hangs for me in August air, a little out of tune. The painted moon, not sky, not pearl, not flame, only the light you gave to them and never gave my name. The booth goes dark, the bulbs grow cool, the tide begins below, and on its nail the wooden moon keeps shining where I go.
The stair comes up behind the nave in one close turning flight. The sexton shakes the runner out, and dust goes blue on white. You stand beside the loft rail there, with 3 books on your arm, and lay the ribbons page by page, as if to keep them calm. The organ has not found its breath, the choir bench still is bare, and mine is opened, ribbon laid, before I reach the stair. You test the pitch pipe once, then stop, too soft for downstairs ears, then brush one coal smudge from the rail that gathers every year. The ribbon in the hymnal, red against the fading line, makes the old words seem to know they shall be found again in time. The ribbon in the hymnal, that was your way, and now it stays in mine. When winter pressed the early dark against the colored glass, and tired voices climb the stair. Too late, too cold, too fast. You never asked for any thanks. You never raised your tone. You only marked the place to sing and made the place feel known. The ribbon in the hymnal, red against the evening brown, still tells the hand that opens there where to begin when light goes down. The ribbon in the hymnal, some kindnesses are made that small and sound. The benches fill, the first chord comes, the lamp burns near the wall, and in the book you left for me, your quiet care outsings us all. The chandlery smelled of rope and oil, of tide dragged through the door, and October darkened by the pier a little more than before. You stood beside the counter scale, with salt upon your sleeve, the kerosene tins indented rows, too plain to make believe. A sailor bought a coil of line, a woman asked for twine, and gulls went crying past the roof like warnings out of time. The boy came in with both hands red, his jacket buttoned wrong. He said his father's skiff was late and night would not be long. The lantern on the counter there had soot around the glass. You took it from his worried grip and let the others pass. You cleaned the chimney with a cloth, then turned the burner low. The brass wheel clicked beneath your thumb with one small amber glow. You trimmed the wick, not tall and bright, but short and clean and sure, enough to live against the wind, not high enough to lure. He watched as if the little flame could answer for the babe. You set the handle in his palm and showed him how to stay. Keep it covered till the rocks, you said, and nothing more. But all the harbors seemed to lean around that open door. Some lights are made for windows, some for music, streets or halls. Some are made for weather where the black tide lifts and falls. And some hands know the difference between shining and being seen. A flame kept small enough to last where light larger flames have been. Trim the wick short, let the lantern hold. Let one red glass remember him before the water's cold. Trim the wick short, not too brave, not too wide, just enough of steady fire to walk beside the tide. Trim the wick short till the evening finds the key, till a boy can carry home a little certainty. Trim the wick short, plain oil, plain glass, plain care. Yet something in the harbor dark had learned to aid him there. The skiff came in beyond the rocks. The bellboy answered slow, and in the boy's two lifted hands, that guarded flame stayed low.
The pie case held one lemon slice. The grill was cooling blue, and fly paper above the fan kept turning as it knew. You wiped the counter end to end with water on your sleeve. The coffee urn gone nearly dry, the night too warm to leave. A trucker paid and touched his cap. The screen door gave a cry, and all the road beyond the glass went empty by and by. I stayed beside the corner stool, my hands around one cup, pretending I was waiting out the heat that wouldn't lift. You found a nickel near the till, then crossed the checkered floor and fed it to the jukebox there, as if the room need more. The nickel in the jukebox, silver into song, was only meant to keep the place from noticing so long. The nickel in the jukebox, I watched your hand let go and heard the kind of music that makes leaving move slow. The record turned behind the glass, a trumpet entered late. The sugar bowl stood shining there like guests who meant to wait. You leaned against the pie case edge and listened without show, then wrote the last order of the night where no one else would know. Years later, I remember still the fan, the blue lit chrome, the way that borrowed little tune made one booth feel like home. You never asked me why I stayed. I never told you plain. The road outside was empty then, but not empty in the same. Some nights do not announce themselves as anything to keep. They pass through cups and closing signs, through tired hands and heat. Yet one small coin can mark the hour before the lights are dim, and give a man one song enough to know what followed him. The nickel in the jukebox, falling out of sight, still turns somewhere behind my years in that roadside August light. The nickel in the jukebox, no vow, no kiss, no claim, only your hand choosing a song I never learned to name. The fan slowed down, the record clicked, the screen door held its seam, and in the chrome before it went dark, your reflection kept the dream.
Twilight had left the station wall. The cobblestones were bright. A little bell gave one soft sigh and sent me through the night. The velvet held the empty car. The brass rail kept its blue. My silhouette on window glass looked like a man I knew. We passed the baker's darkened door, the florist's shuttered frame, and every lamp along the street seemed almost like your name. The light along the rails kept turning blue from square to square, and drew old evenings through the air. The light along the rails. One woman left with parcel string, one man with coat and cane. Their footsteps went on silver stone, then faded into rain. I did not mean to lift my eyes or let the past prevail, yet all at once my heart wrote back, with light along the rail. The window glass held one faint star, the wires gave back a sigh. A little hush of reverie moved softly riding by. No serenade came through the dark, no voice called out to me. Only the city washed and dim becoming what would be. And then I knew how memory works, not grand and not in wails. It comes the way a midnight tram throws light along the rails. The light along the rails kept turning blue from square to square, and drew old evenings through the air. The light along the rails. The final corner took the car. The lamps grew thin and pale. Still one last line of tender blue ran softly by the rail. The banquet hall was not yet bright. The chairs still wore their cloth, and in the florist room behind, the ferns lay cool and soft. You stood beside the marble sink with water on your sleeve, a ribbon curled beside the shears, too light to quite believe. The white boxes were marked in rows, the orchids laid in twos. A bellboy came for roses once, then vanished with his shoes. And I, with no appointment there, stayed near the open door to watch you lift a purple bloom as if it weighed much more. The gentleman from table 9 came early, coat in hand, his cufflinks bright, his manner smooth, his smile too well planned. You chose the pin from off the tray, then held the lapel still, and leaned just close enough to work the stem against the twill. He thanked you with a little bow, you only turned away, then checked the ribbon on the box for Mrs. Calder's spray. I said I came to ask the time, though clocks were everywhere, and felt the room grow smaller round that orchid in the air. The pin in the corsage, silver through the green, held one flower near his heart, where mine had never been. The pin in the corsage, I watched your fingers stay, and wondered why a careful touch could take my words away. It was not jealousy, I thought, only June behind a wall, only polished hotel doors, only footsteps in the hall. Yet some small ache will find its proof in what the eye has seen, a flower fastened for another man, and no place left between. The pin in the corsage, hidden sharp and slight, kept the orchid standing proud beneath the banquet light. The pin in the corsage, no promise, no embrace, only your hand making beauty hold on someone else's place. The door swung wide, the music rose, the white boxes grew few, and on the tray one silver pin lay waiting, bright and blue. Half past the ferry bell, the docks were taking shape. Crates of celery, newspapers, gulls in crooked flight. The ticket man had raised his shade. The river wore its workday gray, and all the town came down in shoes, still carrying last night. You missed one button at your wrist, your hair was pinned in less than usual care, and standing by the painted post, you smiled as if the cold were nothing there. Half past the ferry bell, half past the ferry bell. That was the hour the morning nearly broke in two. No grand scene, no farewell speech, only the way I reached to fix the cuff you hurried through. Half past the ferry bell, with the first deck chain drawn well, and the smoke going pale above the piling slick with spray. I learned how quickly common hands may tremble for what might be swept away. A boy went by with milk cans clanging, someone laughed beside a truck. The purser chalked the loading board, the mate called out a word of luck. You said the river looked unkind, too full, too fast for so early in the year, then glanced once where the current took a crate from some forgotten pier. I took your glove from off the rail before the wind could turn it to the tide, and you grew quiet, not from cold, from something neither one of us described. Half past the ferry bell, half past the ferry bell. That was the hour the plain day altered in its frame. No vow spoken over water, only your face gone softer when I said your name. Half past the ferry bell, while the gangplank rose and fell, and the deckhands moved like men who had no time for fear. I learned how dear
a life can look when one small loss comes near. Since then 100 mornings may have crossed, with cleaner skies and calmer boats than that. But memory keeps no weather by the book. It keeps the wet rope, the tilted hat, the wrong cuff, the glove upon the rail, the river shouldering past the pier, and how for one brief breath the whole wide day stood still because you were here. Now when a ferry bell comes thin through fog, it is not warning that I hear so well. It is your wrist beneath